Welcome everyone to the webinar for Audience of the Future Design Foundations 2 competition. Hi, my name's Michel. I work with the Creative Economy team and we support the partnership and engagement work around the Audience of the Future competition. Welcome, thanks for joining us. We're going to have a presentation on the scope and the themes and the ins and outs of the competition itself, and then we have got lots of time for Q&A. We are planning to use Zoom's Q&A functionality, so please stick your questions into the Q&A, not in the chat. The chat tends to get quite tricky to follow and track all the questions. If they go into the Q&A, we can collate them afterwards and circulate. The slides will also be sent round after the session as well. We've got a feast of panelists for you who can cover all aspects of this competition, so that'll be great. I'm going to go round the panelists to introduce themselves, and then we'll get things started. So, Matt, do you want to start off?
Thank you. Yeah, afternoon. So my name is Matt Sansam. I am Head of Delivery for the Audience of the Future Challenge Fund.
Laura?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Laura Partridge. I'm the Innovation Lead for Creative Technologies, working on the Audience of the Future Challenge Fund.
And Fanny?
Hi everyone, my name is Fanni Czegany. I'm the Portfolio Manager from this competition at Innovate UK from the competitions team.
And over to you, Asha.
Hi everyone, I'm Ash Easton and I'm the lead for Merch UK at KTN.
And last but by no means least, Andy.
Hello everybody, I'm Andy Curtis, Head of Digital Economy and Creative Industries at KTN.
Marvellous. And I think we're going to kick off with Fanny, who's going to take us through the start of the competition, and then we're going to hear from Matt and Laura, who are going to dive into the scope and themes. So over to you, Fanny.
Thank you. So first of all, just a few words on UKRI and Innovate UK. UK Research and Innovation, known as UKRI, is made up of 9 research councils, one of which is Innovate UK, and the others can be seen on the screen. At Innovate UK, we work alongside the government to invest £7 billion a year, and we do so by partnering with industry and academia to make the impossible possible. Thank you. Although the research councils cover a wide range of disciplines, they are all primarily focused on academic researchers. However, Innovate UK has a unique critical role within the UKRI family. We are primarily focused on business-led innovation. And we support all conceivable sectors, although we do have our priority sectors. Innovate UK drives productivity and economic growth by supporting businesses to develop and realise the potential of new ideas. We connect businesses to partners, customers and investors that can help them turn ideas into commercially successful products and services and business growth. We fund businesses and research collaborations to accelerate innovation and drive business investment into R&D. And our support is available to business across all academic sectors, value chains and UK regions. Next slide, please. Thank you. We firmly believe that innovation is at the heart of the UK future growth and prosperity. And the UK ranks 5th in the Global Innovation Index. Innovation accounts for up to 50% of productivity. Business that consistently invest in R&D have greater productivity and are more likely to export and generate growth. And through the UK's 9 leading academic and industrial funding councils, we create knowledge with impact. Next slide, please. I think this might be the last one.
Great, thanks very much. Thank you for that. So yeah, that gives you some broad background on who UKRI are, who Innovate UK are, and what we do this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to talk you through some of the background in terms of the Audience of the Future Challenge, kind of who we are, what we're doing, why we're doing it, and then we'll move on to the competition itself and give you some explanation as to what we're looking for and what we need to see in terms of our applications. So really, very quickly, so why we do what we do really in terms of the Audience of the Future Challenge really. So we feel, which I don't think we're alone in this, that immersive technologies are potentially some of the most significant and disruptive technologies to hit creative industries since the web. There are opportunities, there are threats, you know, actually this is all about positioning UK in the current, you know, economic climate and supporting development of UK IP and UK technology in order to kind of add value to UK economy. And really, we think that actually that the opportunity for UK catering creative industries is around that kind of content piece and around experiences rather than necessarily the technology or the platform. That said, we do support hardware development, platform development in some of the other competitions, but specifically what we're looking at today is really more about kind of content and experiences. And again, really just as a sort of quick aim as to why we're doing this, this is really about enabling businesses to develop that knowledge, those skills, those kind of business insights in order to capture that audience, to commercialize that content using immersive technology. And part of what we do is obviously the identification of those sectors. We target those sectors when we run these kind of programs of support and these challenges of support, which is where audiences of the future comes in. Just a very quick note, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on this one. I say the slides will be available afterwards, but these were the objectives and aims that we set ourselves at the very beginning of this. Some of these are already quite good at, so hopefully it's more about maintaining some of the capability and capacity and the skills and talent, but obviously some of them are a bit further to reach and require additional support and activity, which is what we do. Quick note in terms of what do we mean by immersive experiences. So it's AR, it's VR, it's MR, it's XR, it's all the Rs, it's haptics, it's sonics, it's advanced visualizations, it's other sensory interfaces. Essentially, it's any sort of technology-enabled immersive experience is in scope in terms of immersive experiences and immersive technology. What it isn't, because I've been asked this in one of the QAs a while ago, was books do not count, even though they might be immersive. They're not immersive in the context that we're talking about. Again, just a quick reminder about the 9 sectors in the UK that are defined as creative industries. Again, I'm not going to go through the list. You can see that list. Hopefully none of that is a surprise. If after the last few slides you're thinking you're not in the right place, then maybe you're not. This is very much about the commercialization of creative content using immersive tech in and from the creative industries. So the solutions, we'll talk about those in a minute when we talk about the themes. So it's not about just working within the creative industries. If you're in scope for one of the themes, if you're looking at the application of that creative technology, that immersive technology, kind of in and from the technology, in and from that sector into other sectors. So quick note about design foundations. So again, sort of broadly, really, why is it we're doing this? What do we mean by kind of design foundation project? And we're talking about early stage projects, really. So these are, early stage R&D projects. They're kind of the projects that are very early in their cycle. And we're looking to support those so you can iterate those so that you can engage with the kind of consumer and potential customers, so you can understand what your audience needs are going to be, use that insight that is developed from your kind of engagement with customers and potential consumers, and really sort of iterate that to help identify those risks earlier within the R&D path. And for our, from our side, really, actually by supporting those early stage companies, we're helping improve those immersive experiences. We're helping develop and expand those markets around immersive experiences and immersive technology. We're supporting the kind of production of that immersive content. Hopefully we're de-risking your R&D pipeline because we've allowed you to test these things out early and offer and iterate, and sometimes it'll work and sometimes it won't. And then really, as I said, the aim for us is to get you to the point where at the end of these projects, you've got design documents, wireframes, you've got scopes, you've got whatever it is you need in order to take this forward, either funding through us or potentially kind of private investment or any other sources of funding. So we're trying to set you up. And I guess, what do we mean by this? And what are we talking about in terms of, innovation? I suppose if you work on the assumption that, if research is turning money into ideas, then innovation is turning those ideas back into money. For us, this is about the commercialization of that creative content. It's about the commercialization of the development of those ideas. But how do you kind of help support that process? How do you kind of take those ideas? How do you, take it through from initial concept right through to commercialization? And as part of that process, how do you work out which ideas are most likely to succeed? Because these things are high risk R&D projects. They are early stage innovation. It's not always clear what the answer is going to be. We understand that. That's why we support these kind of inherently riskier projects. And how do you do it? So this is what we're talking about here, is actually engaging with those audiences, engaging with your potential customers early enough that you can take those original concepts, you can kind of validate them through that group of people, you can use them to feed back and generate more ideas, and you get this very sort of positive feedback loop, which allows you to kind of focus in on exactly the kind of idea that you want to develop, which then hopefully improves your chance of commercializing those projects. So as I said, the short version of this is, early stage, we invest in those early stage design projects, we help support those early stage design projects, you iterate around with your consumers and the consumer insight that it generates. That hopefully de-risks your R&D project, and then hopefully, increases your chance of deployment, increases your chance of later commercialization of those projects. Talking of design foundations, and in order to be in scope, just to be very clear, so these are early stage projects. You know, this is not about, you know, late GRI levels. This is not about just that point before kind of pre-commercial deployment or scale up of these projects. This is about early stage, exploring those ideas, you know, working out what is best to take forward. You also have to use a recognized design methodology, something along the lines of, you know, the human-centered design research, something like the Design Council have a great double diamond model. So that kind of, you know, divergent, convergent thinking. So essentially working out, you know, what it is that you need to do and then developing it in the right way. So essentially it's to do the right thing and then do the thing right. So that's the point of that double diamond process, is to allow you to kind of work out what the problem is, define the opportunity, develop those ideas and iterate those ideas, and then hopefully develop and deliver a great solution. So that's what we mean by design foundations. So I'm now going to pass you over to Laura, who's going to talk about the scope of the competition and go into a bit more detail around the themes and the possible, you know, the categories under which you can apply.
Thanks, Matt. So yes, just as Matt said, just to dive into a little bit more detail about that. So as Matt's covered already, this is very much for early stage projects, and they're the projects that would be in scope for this funding competition. It needs to be, the funding isn't for, as Matt said, for further developing existing projects or products even. It's very much at enabling you to fast track prototyping and to test new ideas that are within scope. And in that respect, it needs to an application would need to articulate how your proposed project is meeting customer needs, and how you've got to that point, to that understanding through an analysis of customer motivations, customer behaviours. And as such, it's about being able to articulate how a project is really ripe for further R&D and might be something at the beginning of a longer term process that indeed down the line could in fact be funded for further technical development, further R&D. And in terms of the entire what's in scope across the board and how the programme as a whole will be funded, we will be looking at a portfolio approach. So that means that we're looking at a range of different technologies. We're not favouring a specific type of immersive technology over another. Similarly, where those technologies are applied, we're looking at a range of portfolio of different subsectors and indeed different geographical regions. So that's just to reiterate that we are very much looking to build a portfolio across those different factors. And just to summarise here with this slide, it's think about customers' perceptions, motivations and behaviour. That actually alludes back to some of that design thinking that Matt's just walked us through. And equally, I think really a strong application might articulate well what a problem is and define nicely how further R&D in that area could contribute towards a solution. So there's really a narrative that needs to be seen from beginning, middle and end through the course of a project. And those ideas equally need to be validated through relevant research, so that you can see how that narrative might position and what direction a project or a piece of technology might be going in. Thanks, Matt. Just to summarise again, Matt talked before around the Design Council's double diamond concept. He's shown here again. There's a link there. We're not saying that projects are in scope only if they articulate against this particular model, but they do need to be based on established design thinking processes, of which the double diamond is probably the best example. In terms of themes, we've identified three main themes, which you'll have seen from the scope. The first of those is designing for net zero. I should say first on each of these themes, this is built on previous design foundation calls that Innovate UK have run. But these three themes bring this particular competition really up to speed and context with where current priorities are globally and nationally, and across government, of course. So on designing for net zero, obviously very, very topical and timely as we walk towards COP26, for example, looking at how behaviour change in the context of environmental change and sustainability could influence behaviour change in ways of living and working very broadly. Equally, how the technology might be used for storytelling, like all immersive tech is, one could argue, around the objectives and the priorities and the challenges of meeting net zero targets. And also building new worlds through XR to imagine those different futures and how you use that to engage the various different stakeholders and actors and audiences. On the second theme, thanks Matt, designing for Build Back Better. So this is partly, but not exclusively, perhaps post-COVID, looking at the post-COVID economy. What are the new products, services, experiences that could support organisations and industries within the creative industries, such as venues, performance spaces, etc., in the creation and delivery of new immersive content? Related to that, what are the methods, what are the requirements for moving towards more hybrid streams of narratives through COVID and beyond, and how does technology support that? What are the, as well as just what is the story and the narrative, what are the audiences, and how does technology, new products and services assist that in the development of more distributed audiences and multi-channel models post-COVID and moving towards hybrid? And finally, on the content delivery systems themselves. So how do we better enable technology to allow people to feel more connected and part of shared experiences? Particular challenge in that space between getting people back into venues, doing stuff remotely, and the bit in the middle of doing things hybrid. And on the third theme, designing for cross-sector immersive projects. Matt again mentioned a bit of this before, but we're really looking at how do the development of technologies born in the creative industries, such as immersive technology, how are they applied into other industrial sectors? So that's really broad, and we're not going to be prescriptive, but there's some examples there of the kind of sectors we might be talking about. There are, of course, already many examples of this developed and burgeoning across the UK, but what is the further potential for this? Potentially that has, I suppose, prospect of becoming quite impactful and large scale down the line if you're looking at taking an immersive technology and applying it in something like manufacturing or healthcare or education or energy, if you wanted to take that full circle back to net zero. So yes, what's the application of technology into other sectors, and how might this project explore earlier ideas in that space? So that was a bit of whistle stop, but hopefully gives you a bit of an update on scope and a deeper dive into those three thematic areas. Back to you, Matt.
Great, thank you very much. So yeah, I just want to briefly talk about the timeline and say what we're not going to do in today's session is go through all of the kind of the application process and the questions that you need to answer. Fanny's already covered that most excellently in a previous session, which we can send the link round for as well. Although we are here to ask questions, so our hope a little bit is that you're kind of, if you've already started that process and you have some specific questions about your application or that process itself, then we can answer them. But say we're not going to talk you through the whole process right now. Just a reminder really in terms of the key dates, so there isn't a whole lot of time left, but there is still time to get some applications in if you haven't started. So the deadline for that is 11 AM on the 29th of September. So for those of you who are used to Innovate competitions over the years and they normally close at midday, this one doesn't. The new normal for us now is 11 o'clock. So just please be aware of that. That is a very hard deadline. That is a very hard computer says no deadline. So, if you phone us up at 11:10 on the 29th of September, there is nothing we can do. So please don't be that person. Make sure you get your application as early as you possibly can. There are technical challenges, whether that's a technical challenge on your side or potentially even on our side. If you're trying to make your submission at 1 minute to 11, there will be other people doing the same. Please, just be aware of that and just do yourself a favour and bring it forward. And then obviously once the competition has closed, we will put that out to our usual assessment process. They'll go out to 5 independent assessors who are all, NDA'd and are relevant sector experts, and they will review your applications, and then we will tell you whether you've been successful on the 22nd of October. Just one other thing I did want to pull out of the application process. The new process is great. You can go in and out of it. You can save it. You can, work on it and come back to it later. You can bring partners in to do their bits as well. The thing you have to be very, very careful of, if you save your application, that is not submitted. There is a big, shame it's not a big red button, but it's a big green button that says submit application. If you put all the work into your application and you've saved it and you've walked away and you haven't hit that submit button by 11 o'clock, you have not submitted your application. You are not eligible. So even if you finished everything and the only thing you didn't do was hit that submit button and you call us at 11:10 and go, oops, I've made a mistake, then that's unfortunate. So please do make sure that you hit the submit button. And also really just for human value, this is the this is an old competition, but actually you can see the thing. This is the kind of number of applications we get, you know, per kind of how we're going towards the end of the applications. We always get people, it's something horrendous, like 90% of our applications come in the last 24 hours. But, you know, please don't be those people. You know, please get your applications in early. Not least of which, because if you've got questions about your application, or you've got, you know, questions about scope, you can email the support, you can talk to us, you can talk to the lovely people at KTN who will help you with your application, but they can't do that on the morning of the deadline. So please get in there early. Please, you know, either use today's session, have a look at the recording of the previous session, you know, come and talk to us, send us emails at support, you know, just please do get in touch, and please do get in touch as early as you can. Please don't leave it to the last minute. There will be technical problems, there will be problems. And again, like I said, there's nothing we can do to help you at that point. So, you know, help us to help you by getting in nice and early. I think that's probably just about covered it. So what we're going to do is we are going to open it all up to Q&A. What I will do as well is I'll leave it on this slide because that's got the support email address. I'll say if you've got any particular questions, and I would suggest you go to support. One other top tip as well, really, is, you know, if you email us directly, you can do that. My inbox is horrendous. The chances are you won't get a reply, and you certainly won't get a reply before the deadline. If you go to support, it'll raise a ticket, they'll SLA, they have to get back to you, they then have to get to us, they hassle us, they will hassle us on your behalf. Do it through support, because then it's tracked and then we have to reply. So that would be my piece of advice. Like I said, the other piece of advice is, you know, talk to the lovely people at KTN, talk to Andy, talk to Asher. You know, they will help you. They will introduce you to people who can help you with their applications. They're not involved in the assessment process, so they absolutely can help you with the crafting of your application. What they can't do and won't do is write it for you. What they can do is help you kind of wordsmith around the concept and the idea, because, you know, for those of you who've applied for Innovate funding before, you know, they're not trick questions. We are trying to give you money, but they are written in a particular way. And sometimes it's difficult, if you've not done it before, to understand the kind of concepts that we are looking for. So, you know, we can help you with that. I think the further away it gets from sort of questions about just the scope and process and more towards a particular project, the less I or Laura can help you, because we are involved in that assessment process and we are part of that portfolio review. So we can't do that for you. But hopefully, yeah, there are people who can help you. So just get in there early enough that it makes sense. Okay, so that was a couple of general points, but have we got some questions we can run through?
Well, Matt, we've got Asher's got her hand up, and
yeah, I'll just make one quick comment on that, if you reach out early enough, we can have like a call in advance, so we can just check to make sure that what you're doing is in scope, and then if we deem that it is, then usually what I would do is have someone send me like a working Google Doc with their application filled out, and then I can add suggestions and edits to it. But again, like as Matt said, we won't write it for you, but that's like the easiest way to get help from us.
And just to add to both Asher and Matt's points, I've just popped our contact details in the chat. So what that brings you through to is the KTN website, but it enters you into our customer relationship management system in the way that Matt has described that works at Innovate UK, and it will come through to us. And if you pop your interest in talking to the digital economy team about it, then we can help you. And generally it's around guidance around hitting those bullet points and the questions in the how to apply section on the Innovate UK page, and we can talk about the ins and outs of that. What we can do is we can talk about other areas around your innovation and what it is you're trying to achieve and your roadmap around that, and also feedback on certain things around impact as well, because impact is everything for this one.
Cool. So the other thing I would say as well is, apart from if you're looking at a collaborative bid as well, and potentially you're looking for a partner to, you know, fulfill a particular kind of technical area that you've already identified, KTN can also help you with that. I mean, not even necessarily around this competition or your application process, but if you're looking for, you know, immersive technology people who know what they're doing, then Ash can help you with Immerse UK as a special interest group that they run. There are other businesses that they can help introduce you to as well. So I guess if you have a known challenge and a known problem that would benefit from being introduced to someone with a particular set of skills, they can do that for you as well. So that's another thing they can help you with.
We've got a couple of, I know something that's come up a few times previously is, can you align with more than one of the themes, or does it have to be specifically one of the three?
You have to choose one theme for one application. I mean, you could put in multiple applications across different themes, but if you're going to do that, please do check the guidance, because there are limits to the number of applications that you can make. You can also be a collaborative partner on a number of other applications as well. So if you're a technology provider, you can provide a particular solution that could be purposed in a number of different ways. You could be part of multiple bids, but yeah, so for any given application, then yeah, you have to choose one of the themes. So please be careful with that one. On that note, because this is a question we've been asked a lot, the application of creative technologies into other sectors, that does not mean, unfortunately, the application of creative technologies from one creative sector to another creative sector. It's in and from the creative industries into other areas. However, if you've got an application of creative tech that you're looking to put into another sort of within the creative industries, then I would encourage you strongly to look at the net zero and the build back better challenges, because obviously net zero, there's a piece around kind of engagement and storytelling and sort of reach out to people, so it might be relevant for that one. But also the build back better piece, which is about, you know, live venues, performance spaces, hybrid revenue models, hybrid audience models, kind of audience engagement. Again, that's audience is quite a broad term. I mean, in terms of what we mean by audience, in the grandest sense, in terms of audience of the future, we mean any consumer of creative content, really. But in terms of the challenge, what we're talking about in audience is, you know, is essentially again your customer, your consumer, the kind of the audience for your piece of creative content. So it's pretty broad, I think. Just, and again, if you're not sure, come and talk to us. Kind of, you know, drop us a note with a rough kind of high level outline of what you think, or not what you think, what your idea is, and then we can just, you know, give you a bit of direction if that helps.
Cool, thanks, Matt. Quick one, can you lead on more than one application, or do you have to, you can only act as a participant on the other ones?
I'll let Fanny answer that one.
Business can only lead on one application.
Oh, thank you. We've got a couple of questions that have come in. So we've got a question from Ed, who's asked, how would you look on long-term product roadmaps that know they will involve XR, but don't know yet how? Is this the right application, or do you need a more specific vision regarding the role of immersive at the outset?
I mean, this is the use of immersive. I think if you know that, in terms of what you mean by don't know how, I think if you know that that's the technology area on which you're going to focus, and this is an R&D project to understand consumer needs and understand the application of that technology in a specific way, then this is absolutely the right thing for you. If you're sitting there kind of going, oh, we think we might do some immersive stuff, that's probably a bit too vague. But when we do understand these are early stage, there are absolutely unknowns in this. So if you're saying that, you know, we're looking at a long-term commercialization, actually those kind of, you know, long-term roadmaps for commercialization, dissemination, exploitation, scale up are all great, in as much as they're not the thing we're funding now. But if you can speak to that within the application in terms of this is your long-term commercialization, well, that bodes well for your ability to commercialize this as an idea. I mean, our expectation is that there is still more R&D, there is still product development to be done on, you know, using the outputs of these design foundation projects. But, you know, this is to sort of set you up and point you in the right direction and get you moving. So I think, yeah, if you think there's an XR solution here, and what you're looking to do is define the kind of the nature of that XR piece, then yes, because effectively this is part of that iteration.
Oh,
that's quite a long answer, but hopefully that helps.
Hopefully, I'm sure they'll can always ask follow-up questions. We've also got another one. Given the short time frame, less than 3 months, to what extent can we use existing data reports or evidence to define the problem rather than engaging in new surveys or user testing?
That's a fair point. I think they are short-term projects. So yes, you can use existing kind of reports, data, evidence to kind of highlight the area of focus. I mean, I think there still needs to be some level of iterative R&D in this piece, but if you're essentially saying that you're building on something else, or you're taking something else a little bit further and then using that to iterate and refine, then that's okay. It's a similar answer to the technology question, which is, you know, if you've already got a technology platform, can you use a technology platform or a sort of code base in order to develop that further? And the answer to that question again is yes, as long as there's a new R&D piece that is to be being developed as part of this. So if you're a small business and you've got a technology platform, and there's a bunch of really interesting, really innovative kind of projects that you would love to investigate that you can't do because of risk profile or funding or timing or any other kind of justifications, that's great for you, for us, because actually that's the sort of thing that probably wouldn't happen without public funding. So you kind of go, like, here's our core technology platform that does this, but if we had the R&D funding, we'd love to investigate this piece of non-trivial technology, solutions, this kind of innovative R&D, this interesting piece of, immersive technology deployment, and this is what we'd look to iterate and push out through this kind of design foundations.
Follow up on that separately. If you've done some R&D, some early stage R&D with other partners or funders, can you still apply for this?
Yes, you can't apply, obviously, with two things there, I suppose. Is one, you can't apply with the same project. You also, obviously, we're not going to fund you to do the same thing again. So, you have to be sort of moving the needle forward on this stuff, to mix my metaphors. But yeah, so if it's a project you've already done, you can take the outputs of that project and then, take it forward. But there does have to be some sort of clear delineation between what you've already done and what we're funding you to do now. But yes, in theory.
We've got a great question from Johnny. Is there an expectation that the feasibility studies, which show promise, will then be able to apply for future Audience of the Future funding? Is there an Audience of the Future Part 2?
Thank you for that, Mr. Freeman. That is the expectation here, is that, without naming anything, we absolutely are hoping that we will fund you through a relatively short period, so that come April 22, you can go straight into whatever is next. I don't know what is next yet. Obviously, you've seen the spending review has just been opened, so we are feeding into the spending review. We are hoping that there are interesting programs of support and activity we can do around the creative industries and immersive tech specifically. So hopefully, but that's about as precise as I can be at this point. But yes, absolutely, we will kind of set you up and wish you well. So hopefully what you get at the end of March is absolutely something you could then take forward from April onwards.
Sounds good. I think we can add the phrase, the usual caveats apply.
Yes.
As far as funding is concerned. This might be a question for Fanny, I guess. Can a university partner with a business for a submission? Does the business need to lead, or can the uni lead?
It needs to be a business-led, the lead needs to be a business. So it's either an SME who will need to be the lead, or you can be a business of any size, but you will need to include an SME as part of your collaboration. So in that case, the university would need to be a collaborator with an SME included.
Cool, thank you.
Another thing to add in terms of universities as well, be aware of the level of funding and the cap on the funding for university partners. So that's capped at 30% of the project. So if there's only one university partner, that's great, 30%. If there's two, both of you are kind of capped within that 30%. So 50%. They
will share that 30%. Yeah.
Talking of funding, we've got another question as well from Charlotte, who's asking, I've got 25 grand of funding from Innovate towards making a prototype for a multi-sensory interactive LED installation-based audience experience. That's quite hard to read. We ideally need about twice the sum for a fully fledged prototype to be presented to potential investors in the small-scale interactive LED cave. Sounds great. Can I apply for this fund? I guess that's matching. Can you use this fund to match existing funding from another Innovate competition?
No, but to be very specific about the no there, you can't use other public funding to match public funding. So you can't use another fund to be your 30% of ours. You could, in theory, this sort of slightly goes back to if you've done a piece of work and been funded to do something under the multisensory interactive LED installation-based audience experience, that's great. If there's a piece that you want to take on after that, if there's still a problem you need to solve around that kind of audience insights and engagement and experience, then you could use this to do that on top of that, as long as
I might different. Sorry, I might have misunderstood. So Charlotte's follow up. So it's not match funding. It's more, I think that this would be the prototype, and then you'd apply to.
Yeah, I mean that's one definitely I would drop an email into KTN or support and ask the question, and my voice is going, apologies.
You mean Innovate UK support, Sam, Matt?
Yes. Yeah, customer services.
Yeah. You said KTN.
Yeah, or KTN.
We can talk to you about it as well in terms of your innovation roadmap.
Yeah, talk to either.
Thank you. We got a question from Farhan. He's the founder of a digital cultural ecosystem for South Asian classical music. They've got a music streaming platform, and they'd like to understand the specific consumer needs of the Pakistani community in the UK to listen to this genre and if our delivery meets those needs. Is this something that would be in scope, and which theme would this fall under?
Now that's an interesting question. I guess that's a build back better distributed audience, hybrid audience piece. I guess the other thing to bear in mind is it needs to be, developed and exploited kind of in and from the UK. So if you're doing the work here for a global market, that's great. If you're looking to do bits of work outside the UK, let's say you have sort of subcontractors outside the UK, you have to be very specific as to why that piece of work can't be done within the UK. I think, but essentially projects that target global markets are great. Yeah, we're a big fan of those because again, that speaks to the, deployment at scale and commercialization of these pieces. So yeah, that sounds, I think, yeah.
Just to add, yeah. Sorry, Matt, just to add to that as well, in terms of R&D and technology, I see from your question, it's just disappeared off my screen, sorry, but from that question there was reference to platforms that you're already using, so it would need to show, to demonstrate R&D into new technology and new application as opposed to a reworking of this existing technology.
Yeah, and I think again in terms of innovation, it's not enough to say, and I'm not suggesting you are at all, but just as another example, it's not enough to say, oh, there's a piece of tech in the States, we want to rebuild that in the UK. That's not innovative. That's just redeploying an existing concept and developing over here. So there does have to be R&D. What's the kind of non-trivial technical challenge that you're looking to solve? How are you going to use audience insights to iterate that proposal? How is that going to then get you to a point where you've got, like I said, outputs, wireframes, prototypes, whatever it happens to be, in order for you to kind of have a package of things that you could then take forward if you can find some subsequent funding, either private or public.
Great. I'm interested, is there any learnings from Design Foundations 1 that would be useful to know for applicants to Design Foundations 2? I mean, themes or scope or types of research or anything?
No, in as much as the themes for Design Foundations 2 are different to the themes for Design Foundations 1. That said, you can find there's quite a lot of those projects that were successful projects that were funded that we've done sort of case studies and success stories on, and they've done their own promotion. So yeah, it absolutely wouldn't hurt to have a look back and look at the kind of things that we have funded in the past. But please don't look at the themes from Design Foundations 1 because they were very different. I mean, broadly, it's within the challenge of audiences of the future, but we've picked 3 very specific themes this time. So yeah, look at those in terms of, I guess, scale, kind of things that are interesting, kind of, the innovation and the R&D path they've gone through and the journey that they went through in terms of those design methodologies. And then sort of, look at that in terms of the scale of these projects. Because they're not massive projects, we get that, but say this, the point really is to enable you to do something that you've wanted to do but haven't been able to do, so that you can then take it forward.
And it's true to say that from the projects that were successfully funded out of Design Foundations 1 have done particularly well in terms of moving on. It's been a very successful competition in terms of their growth that's been shown.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
We got another question. It's a very pragmatic one. Do overheads and capital depreciation count towards our 30% contribution? Is that a funny question, maybe?
Yeah.
Yes, it might be. However, I'm not 100% sure what the 30% contribution means in this situation, because the funding rules are based on the project type, it's in feasibility studies, and also the type of the business, because it depends whether it's a small, medium, or a large enterprise. So the funding rates are different as opposed to which type of business they are. So I'm not 100% as to which of this applies to this question, unfortunately, just by reading it. However, we define overheads as additional costs and capital usage. So when it comes to actually inputting, the applicant inputting their finances into IFS, they will be separated as 2 different things. So overheads and capital usage will come under 2 different costs. But I would recommend, if there's any more specific sub-questions in relation to this, please come out to us and we can double check that with project finance. So please send us an email, the customer support email address, and then we'll double check that with project finance.
Thank you. I think also, just as a general point, in terms of these projects, they're 50k projects. Please don't try and sort of work this backwards from the grant numbers and the match funding. Think of that, you need to define and justify the project and what you need in order to deliver the project, and then we will fund you. We will grant fund a proportion of that project, as Fanni said, depending on the size of your business or whether you're an academic partner. Don't sort of go into this thinking, oh well, it's 50k and we're only going to, this is our 15k and how do we sort of justify that? These are projects of a certain size. So work it from that. You'll find it much easier, because then it becomes very easy to justify the cost and everything else and the scale. As I said before, ask for what you need, not for what you want. Don't just go in there and go, it's 50k, we'll have 50k, thank you very much. If you need 50k, that's great, because you'll be able to explain it and justify it and tell us why you need 50k. Also, don't do things like put in a day rate contract for 20 grand a day, because we'll look at that and then we'll look at the kind of, the assessors know the kind of standard, the going rates on, but also with the understanding that this is R&D and you're looking for particular people and you need specialists, but they will look at the cost and make sure the costs are appropriate. And if they're not, you will be significantly scored down on that basis. So yeah, definitely go in there from a project point of view. It's to do the thing you want to do is a project of this size. This is why you need it. This is how it's justified. This is why you need the help, and then you can work out the finances, and that will be much, much easier than trying to work it backwards. Yeah. Okay.
Great. I've got a question for Asha and Andy actually. Sorry to put you on the spot. In terms of the application, is there anything in the general approach to answering the questions on the application form that you've seen applications that makes a project particularly compelling for the assessors?
Yeah, so go for it, Asha. You first, sorry.
That's okay. No, I was just saying, I can say something that I see as an error I see very, very often, which is just that people tend to, because this is a small part, obviously, of like a bigger vision of what they're trying to achieve, right? People go into great detail about their big vision for longer term and don't talk enough about specifically what they're going to do and the innovation. And I see that a lot. So it'll be like 2 lines of this is the innovation, and then here's like 3 paragraphs about what it's going to do like in the long term for what I want to build. So just be aware of focusing in on what you're actually applying for money for. Yeah,
can only echo that. Yeah. I think to add to that, I would also say on the page that I've posted there, which is the how to apply tab on the page, there's a list of bullet points that take you through a narrative to give the assessors the full story. So make sure that you answer every single bullet point. Don't miss one out, because that will not be assessed well, because you'll be missing vital information. And also don't repeat yourself. The questions are pretty clear. There's no need to repeat at the beginning, we are trying to do X, Y, Z, and we're going to take over the world doing it. Everybody says that. We just need an honest and factual description of what you're doing. No marketing BS, please. And then we can have a structured conversation around that.
Yeah. Also, I think there's a really good point, actually. Yeah, so that's great. Thank you for that. I think the other thing I would say, these are always very competitive. All these competitions that we do, there are always many more applications than we can fund. So, it is competitive. You do need to be kind of, on the ball when it comes to explaining your idea and getting your concept across. I would say a couple of quick tips, really. Spell check it. That sounds utterly trivial and it sounds really kind of trite, but it isn't, because you've got assessors who are looking at lots of applications every day. And if 2 come in at the same time and one of them, they're both ostensibly the same, but one of them's just very badly written, bad punctuation, not spell checked, and one isn't, you can see how that's going to go. Also, you're asking us for money. So, if you want us to give you money and you can't be bothered to spell check your application, well, that's your problem, not necessarily ours. In terms of your applications, please do not put URLs in your application. Don't try and sort of get around word counts by going, here's a link, you can come and see our webpage and we'll tell you loads more stuff, because the assessors will be told specifically not to follow URLs within applications. So that information will not get counted. So again, try and be sort of concise and helpful within your application. On that note, don't use acronyms all over the place, or if you're going to, please explain them. Don't assume your audience knows what the hell you're talking about if you're kind of putting in loads of kind of letters and they are We have sector experts, we have broad technology experts as well. So generally, you know, people know what they're talking about, but they may not know what your acronym means in this particular context. So please don't do that, or at least explain it the first time you do it. Also, when you're talking about things like your team and you're trying to say, look, here's who we are and here's what we do, that's great if you're speaking to the kind of skills that you already have within the team and your ability to deliver and the fact that you can do this stuff. We don't want full life biographies of all of your team. You haven't got the space for it and it's not necessarily relevant. So if you've got a kind of star player from a particular kind of sector or university that you want to name check, that's great. And, you know, and but really we're looking to understand that you've got the right skills within the consortium, what we don't, in order to deliver on this project, which brings me to the last bit really is, the best thing for us is if you've got a team who knows what they're doing, who has all the skills in there, who can deliver on a project, that's great. The next best thing though, and this is still good, is, you know, if you've got a team and you know where the challenges are and you know what the problems are and you know how, you know, you need to fill that gap and this is how you're going to do it, that's great. That's equally valid. And if you're doing a kind of, I don't know, some kind of hybrid audience model that requires a kind of, you know, a mobile payment solution, and you know that, and you've got this kind of e-commerce person lined up, well then that's great, that's perfectly fine. And actually, if you say to us things like, well, we're going to use the funding in order to secure that person because we couldn't do it otherwise, again, that sort of adds to that why you need public funding argument. The worst thing you can do is have gaps in your proposal and not realize it. I guess it's the unknown unknowns thing, isn't it? But yeah, if we're looking at proposals that requires hybrid revenue streams with mobile payments and you haven't got an e-commerce person and you don't even realize you're going to need one, well, that is not, you know, it doesn't speak well to your ability to deliver on a high risk R&D project. So just kind of be aware of that. It's fine to have gaps as long as you know where those gaps are and you explain them. Yeah, I think that was me.
Andy's got his hand up. Andy?
Cool.
It was just one last point really, and that is, if you're talking about stats and figures and size of markets and things like this, please name the source of your information. Don't make it up on the spot. Always really helpful for us.
Yeah.
I can add in two things I'd add in is, one is formatting. If you have to read these as an assessor, you read a lot of stuff and massive blocks of text are excruciating to go through. And the second one is, not all the questions that you answer will be scored, but they're still all read. So use them wisely to fill out your story. We've got another question. Johnny's back. Do proposals have to promise a technical prototype within the feasibility project, i.e., if we have identified opportunities from current or previous research that speak directly to one of these themes, can the proposal be focused on researching the needs of players in the value chain and of audiences to define a development roadmap for technical implementation through future funding or investment?
That's a good question. Yes, is the short version. As long as you're kind of, yeah, because it's about defining the problem statement, and I suppose, as you say, researching those you know, users, those players within that chain, and the audiences that you're going to engage with, and then the outputs are the, you know, the roadmap and the effectively the definitions of the technical requirements in order to take it forward. So yes, in the broader sense. But again, that's starting to sound like you've got a very specific idea in mind, which is great, but, you know, come and talk to us about that and we can give you a bit more information. Talking about Andy's statistics, actually, was it something like 57% of statistics are made up on the spot? So, you know, if you can quote your references, then please do. Yeah.
Excellent. So I think we've still got some time if anybody has got any outstanding questions. I think that's because most of the questions that I had lined up. If anybody else has got anything to add, I suppose there was one thing I was going to ask. This strikes me as being quite different from most of the other competitions that Audience of the Future has run and possibly Innovate. What's the thinking behind that? Why is it this approach?
I think it's maybe less different than you might imagine. I think some of it comes down to the themes that we've specifically chosen this time out, I suppose. So that's sort of why I wanted to talk about the design foundations as a sort of concept, as an initial statement, because this is at its heart a design foundation competition. So, you know, without going all over it again, but, you know, it's audience insights and it's having the materials ready at the end of it that you could then take further forward. I think in terms of the audience proposition, I think what has evolved over time, so the earlier competitions we did within audiences was very much about, you know, commercialization of creative content using immersive tech, and it was about the the sort of creation, deployment, consumption of that content within the creative industries. So we did the, the production innovation for immersive content competition, which was about creating that content cheaper, faster, more efficiently. I think what's shifted over time is the deployment of that technology kind of in and from the creative industry. So we did that for the investment accelerator. And actually what we got back was quite a lot of interesting projects that were looking at, XR in healthcare or forensics, I think was one of them, or, so that it was about the deployment of that technology in and from creative into other sectors. And it's really interesting. So that sort of journey, if you like, is specifically why we've got that third theme, because actually over the last kind of 3 or 4 years, it's been clear that there's a direction of travel, and it's the application of that tech is where there are some really, game-changing opportunities. And I think if you look at AR as an enabling technology has the, the potential to change the world properly, significantly. Once you've got to the point where there's a form factor of your AR is, it's these kind of glasses and everything's being overlaid and this sort of, all that kind of information flow, then it's not about necessarily, at that point, it's not about creative industries and an experience. It's about just the application of that technology into everything and everywhere. So, that's what we're sort of trying to, early days, but, trying to help support and enable, I think. And also, I guess, and it slightly speaks to the net zero piece a little bit, but, I think as other technologies have evolved and other technology areas have evolved, then it's opened up further opportunities around immersive tech and again a deployment of that content. So for example I always use because I like it, when you start talking about autonomous vehicles and that shifts away from a driver experience to a passenger experience because you're sitting in a kind of pod that's driving down the M1 for 2 hours, what are you doing? Well, actually you want some entertainment. So as it shifts from a driver experience to a passenger experience, then there's opportunities within that environment for us to deploy, creative content and creative experiences. And suddenly that becomes, your venue becomes a thing that you're sitting in for 2 hours, which is a sort of transitory, hybrid audience piece. So I think there are, the world is shifting around us, not least because of the pandemic as well. The deployment, those kind of distributed platforms and those distributed audiences is kind of as a direct result of our thinking. It has absolutely accelerated the disruption within the sector, and it's accelerated that innovation path for quite a lot of businesses and quite a lot of significant players within those sectors. So it's evolved over time, but I think what we're trying to do here really is sort of towards the end of where we've got to is really just enable you to some very quick, I was going to say quick and easy, but they're not, some very quick, R&D projects, which will then set you up. So from April next year, you can really run with them and we can see what we can do to help.
Yeah, and just to sort of add to that and summarise it really back in the sort of bigger picture context, I think where we want to land at the end of this with this portfolio of funded projects is we're really see this as an opportunity to kind of directly articulate the amazing role of immersive technology, creative technologies in shaping those kind of economic and social challenges and build the future, really, which sounds a bit naff and very optimistic, but it feels like the right note to maybe end on. So yeah, it's very much about shaping those big challenges that the 3 themes allude to, with creative technology leading the way in that space.
Brilliant. Oh, we got somebody snuck in a question right at the end. Should we just do this one very quickly? Can the project funding to be used to cover the construction cost of a mobile lab to deliver immersive content and get user feedback in the future? A touring mobile lab.
Not well, my concern with the way that that's written is that the implication is you'd be looking to cover the cost of the lab now to do the user feedback in a future project, and that's not in scope. I think if there are kind of construction costs, so let's say you're doing a kind of a demonstrator or a mobile deployment or whatever it happens to be, and that's the piece that's going to be used as part of your R&D project, then that is in scope. What we're not doing is we're not just kind of funding you to build something that you can use later on for an R&D project. It's got to be part of that iterative user testing, and it's got to be part of your R&D project now, in which case it would be in scope. So again, just be sort of clear about which kind of point of the journey towards building the future you are at. There you go.
Brilliant. Thanks, Matt. Well, and thank you, everybody. I think we'll wrap it up there. If there's further questions, you've got the contact details up there. Don't forget, the competition closes at 11 a.m. That's 11 a.m., not 12 like it used to be, on the 29th of September. I'd like to say thanks to Matt and Laura, Fanny, Andy, and Asha. We will circulate the recording and the presentation as soon as Zoom does its magic and cranks it out the other end. And good luck with your applications. enjoy the rest of your day. Cheers, everyone.
Good luck.
Good luck.
Bye.
Bye. Good luck.
Bye.